we are going to Prince Edward Island in September. Third reread of Anne of Green Gables. It was amazing, with nothing but dreams to fill my life. And then she runs into some random person and we gotta listen to her yapping for the whole rest of the chapter.
The stream is really nice. I like.
This book's about Anne. Like, get out of here, Gilbert. Was not expecting that. Was not expecting that. I like this one more than the first one. I committed to the bit. Crack in the spine right where I stopped reading when I was little. And if you've seen Friends, I had to put the book in the freezer. As you can see, I have my lovely Anne of Green Gables collection right here. These are just the mass market paperback editions that I got when I was a child. My goal for a minute now has been to finish this series. So I read all of them when I was in 4th grade. I was about 10 years old, and I got to Rilla of Ingleside, which is about one of Anne's daughters. And I think that I was definitely too young when I first read this book, but I abandoned it and I never went back. And I would love to finally finish this one. I don't even remember how far I made it. I somehow remember it was only a couple chapters in, but the spine is cracked back here. So that would be almost to the end. What was 10-year-old me doing? I almost finished it and then I gave up, which was unlike me back then. I'm much more likely to not finish a book now than I was in my youth. If I started something, especially if I bought it, I was committed. A couple years back, before I started law school, I wanted to start reading unread books on my bookshelf and make that more of a priority. When I started college and was studying for my English major, I started accumulating books a little bit faster than I could read them. It wasn't too bad. Since then, it's gotten worse. Update, it's gotten worse. But because of that, I ended up reading Lord of the Rings for the first time. I have read a fair few of previously purchased books that are on my shelf, and I still have a nice little shelf over there, but I've been making my way through them like 1 or 2 a year maybe, which is not so bad. Anyways, with my Anne series, I wanted to start making my way through them again, and my goal was to read 1 book a year every year starting in 2020. So in 2020, and I have a vlog about this one, I reread Anne of Green Gables. I had such a good time. And right after I reread it, that was right when the Netflix show Anne with an E was coming out. It was a beautiful time. I read this book over the summer, adored it, stood the test of time. It was fantastic. And then I spent that first year of law school, I think it was into 2nd semester around Christmas when I started watching the show, fell in love again. That was great. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna read 1 a year. So then I started law school in 2020. So I read this kind of like in between the first and 2nd year. I think that I read this for the other readathon. So I did the Life's Library readathon twice, and then I got too much with law school and the job because that's a pretty intense readathon. So I read this for the 2nd year readathon, and this one's not as good as the first one. It's simply not as good, but it's part of the series. So I made it through this one. And then my 2nd year of law school, I distinctly remember reading this in that apartment. I read Anne of the Island, and I loved this one. I'm sure, as you can see by these tabs that I added in, that I then proceeded to never type up, which is what I did with the first book and possibly the second book, but honestly I don't think that I highlighted a whole lot in the second book. But this one hit me so hard, was not expecting that. The first one was a really good time, and the second one I sort of trudged through. But this one, Anne's in college and she's getting her bachelor's, and when they get them, they talk about having their BAs. This is probably one of the quotes that I highlighted. And I now have my bachelor's. I was on my way to getting my JD, which I now have, and it was very, very emotional for me. So I loved that one. And then we got to Anna Windy Poplars. So this little box set was a Christmas gift from my grandma when I was in 4th grade. So that's just really special for me. It's probably one of my all-time favorite Christmas presents that I've ever gotten. 3rd year of law school, Anna Windy Poplars was up, pulled it up, was really excited. When I was in 4th grade reading these for the first time, I remember this book being my favorite. I ate this up. 2nd semester 3L, just studying for the bar exam. And I'm like, it'd be fun to read some Anne. I opened this up. Bookmark's literally still in here. I made it like 2 chapters. So I made it 3 chapters. Started this one. It's an epistolary novel, which I don't remember it being. I said, I can't do this right now. Well, now we are going to Prince Edward's Island. We are going to Prince Edward Island in September. I'm so excited. We're gonna visit the Anne house. We're gonna go to Halifax. We're gonna go to Nova Scotia. We'll be on the island. I'm so, so excited. Childhood me cannot believe it. I'm hoping to get a nice edition of Anne of Green Gables. I'm sure that I can find one there, just the first one. I love these copies, but it'd be nice to have a pretty one. And then I have also started listening to books on Bound, and they are both from Canada, and Ariel is currently reading through the Anne series, and I'm working through them in reverse order. So right now she is on the 5th one. 4 I pretty much got on lock, but these guys, Anne of Ingleside and Rainbow Valley, I don't really remember, but I do remember being absolutely befuddled that this one's called Rainbow Valley and it's not called Anne of something. I don't like that. I still don't like that. So what I've heard about this one, the 8th one and the final one, is that it's not really a part of the Anne series. It is. I mean, it's labeled number 8 up here, but it's not. It's darker in tone and it's older for a more mature audience, which I find interesting. Also, what I didn't know is that Anne of Windy Poplars was written last out of all of these, and it was just slotted like, I'm gonna start this again. I'm gonna start it properly. I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna have a good time. I'm not gonna try to read one a year. I'm gonna try to read them continuously until I finish. I don't think I'll finish all of them this year. I would be shocked if I did. I would like to finish the first 2 maybe before we leave. That would be great. But I want to make this a little Anne vlog, a reading vlog, a visiting Prince Edward Island vlog, and everything. So welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited. I finished. This would be my 3rd, I think. It might be 4th if I reread it when I was younger. My 3rd reread of Anne of Green Gables. It was amazing. I first read this when I was in 4th grade and fell in love with Ella Montgomery. She was my first favorite author ever. I'd had favorite books and children's books, but she was my first favorite author. So I read this in 4th grade, and I went back and I reread this in 2020, and it was fun. I had a good time, but this reread, it hit so much harder. I found it so much more emotional. especially after going through and rereading a couple while I was in law school. I will say I feel like I have better momentum. It is now the following Monday since I started this little project, so I reread this in a week. And I feel like I have better momentum. I've already started the second one, but I'm gonna try to hit these hard and hit them hard while I have steam and get through them, reading them one at a time each year. I felt like I was losing steam. This book is just so special. It's always gonna be so special to me, and this reread in particular, I particularly noticed things that I find so interesting and love in literature to this day. So much about fiction and reality and imagination and living in your head, what it means to grow up, memory. I'm gonna go through and do a deeper dive on some quotes, but yes, I've finished this one, loved it. I already mentioned I've now started the second one, which is Anne of Avonlea. I know that I don't like this one as much as the first one, but I'm pleasantly surprised by how much I am enjoying this one. If you don't know, the first one is Anne. It follows her from when she's 10 to about 16 and a half. And it is her being adopted by the siblings Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert, and her joining their family, growing up, making friends. So Anne of Avonlea, this book is sort of in between, and I was commenting to my mom, but she's 16 and a half and she's gonna be a full-fledged teacher. Like, she's got a whole schoolroom and she's gonna teach, just very different from now. But she's gonna be a teacher right in Avonlea, right where she went to school. So this one's more anecdotes, vignettes, short, light, and fun from what I remember about this one. But I'm enjoying that so far. I'm I'm 4 chapters in, about 30 pages, and liking that one. Happy to report I finished Anne of Avonlea. I'm flying through these. We'll see if we can keep this momentum. It's been a book a week exactly now. I'm thinking the 4th one will be the one that breaks that, and I have some trips coming up, but I'm pleased that they've been going so quickly, and I have significantly more than a book a week time before our trip. I'm happy to report it's also going so fast because I'm loving these. I loved Anne of Avonlea a lot more than I remembered it, even having just read it. And again, same with this one, hit harder than that last reread that I had just done. I loved spending a little bit more time in Green Gables, even though Anne is older, and it really felt more like a gap year and relatable, and I really picked up on the theme. Things are changing and it's hard to accept that. I want to read one quote because I think it really speaks to me and my reading experience since I've been 10 years old, honestly, and themes that I really keep gravitating towards and really speak to me. Dreams and make-believes are all very well in the daytime and the sunshine, but when dark and storm come, they fail to satisfy. One wants real things then, but you don't know this. 17 never knows it. At 17, dreams do satisfy because you think the realities are waiting for you further on. When I was 17, Anne, I didn't think 45 would find me a white-haired little old maid with nothing but dreams to fill my life. There's a quote, it's in The Hours trailer, and it's been so long since I've read The Hours by Michael Cunningham that I don't know if it's actually in the book or not. But the woman, Meryl Streep, who's playing Clarissa in real life in the 90s, she says, I remember one morning waking up at dawn, there was such a sense of possibility. I have lost those feelings forever. And I think that's a really good way to summarize Mrs. Dalloway as well. Again, there's not a quote that really sums that up so fully and completely, but so much of this literature about change and getting older and youth and processing it, how your childhood affects you and how you feel when you're older, how you're living. And I think it's so strange that you can live in your present, but you have to live in your past, and that happens a lot and a lot more as you get older. Doing things will remind you of something else, and that's why Wolf's literature is so great, because someone's doing something and all of a sudden you're back, and that's what it's like. That's what living is like. It's so real and so vivid. And I'm loving the Anne stories as well, because at least in these earlier ones with her imagination, and she's living in her current reality, but she also has the world that she's creating for herself. I'm loving them. I loved both the first two. I think this is the first read that I'm really seeing them as literary pieces, and it's making me love them even more. Really loved them as a kid, and then when I reread them, they felt very comforting, and it felt like slipping into an old skin. But this time it feels like seeing a past version of yourself, and I really feel like they're going a lot deeper than I really even picked up on. So I've now started Anne of the Island today. And by started, I mean read one chapter over lunch. I remember this one hitting hard on the reread, so I'm excited to get back into that and read this. And then after this one, I'm officially getting into territory where I don't remember these books. I haven't read them in a while, and the final book that will be brand new to me. So I'm ready. I'm excited for that. I am sort of dreading reaching book 4, and I'm hoping that's not the one that slows my momentum, but I guess we'll just have to see. But I've been making sure to read them, keep up with them, and it helps that the chapters are so short and it goes so fast. It is middle grade, and I think it is working a lot better to read these back to back to back. It's keeping the momentum better than I read one a year, and I found I didn't want to keep going back to it. And the same thing happened to me when I first read them. I read them all back to back and like devoured them. And then I took a pause on the last book, and I never felt compelled to go back for some reason. I finished book 3, Anne of the Island. We also booked all of our lodging for Prince Edward Island this morning, so it's getting so real. I'm so excited. I'm also very hopeful that I can finish all 8 of these before I go. I think it hit harder when I was reading it in law school, but the other 2 definitely hit harder now. Just the last time I read it, it was perfect right time, perfect reason, and I mean now was kind of the perfect time too, but being in the midst of school and reading about them being in school, that meant a whole lot. That was really cool, and like thinking fondly of my own school days as well. Very impressed with these books so far. The first one where it feels like adult state. I'll read 2 quotes from now. She wondered if old dreams could haunt rooms, if when one left forever the room where she had joyed and suffered and laughed and wept, something of her, intangible and invisible, yet nonetheless real, did not remain behind like a voiceful memory. I think about that all the time. It's why I loved paper towns so much in high school, but the memories attached to a place and how that place holds them as they go back, how books hold them as you go back to them. I'm not going to lie, my excitement is waning. I finished Anne of Windy Poplars, It definitely is not still my favorite book, although I can see why I liked it so much as a child. And there were still parts about it that I really liked. There were some things that Montgomery did really good. I don't remember what I talked about in the last clip. So this one was written after the original series. So my understanding is that Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, and Anne of the Island were published chronologically, consecutively, and then book 5 was published, then the current book 7, and then book 8, and then Montgomery's publisher and readers wanted more Anne, so she wrote Anne of Windy Poplars and Anne of Ingleside, Anne of Ingleside, which is number 6, and like slotted them in. So reading these as an adult now, they do feel slotted in, but it's still the same style and it has that same vignette-y feel from the earlier novels. Things that Montgomery did good, that were fantastic and great, and she's writing this towards the end of her career now, so you can see how she's grown as a writer. Things that were great, the nature writing and the nature descriptions, wow. Like, you get a little bit of that in Anne of Green Gables, and I'd say less in some of the other ones, but this one really comes back to the forefront. I wish there was more of it. A chapter in particular, Anne's going out to the graveyard for the first time, and I'm like, oh, this will be great. In Anne of the Island, we get some great descriptions in the graveyard there, and then she runs into some random person and we gotta listen to her yapping for the whole rest of the chapter. But that was good. Still bringing in some of that imagination and that fun. Honestly, Anne didn't develop a lot as a character, and you don't see as much of the characters that you know and love, and then that's a con that comes with slotting it in. We get a whole bunch of characters that I know aren't going to appear in any of the other novels. Another thing she did really well, the chapter when Anne goes back and visits Green Gables and really describes Christmas. Amazing, fun, magical, perfectly captures coming home. I did like Anne being a working woman and off on her own. I did like that. I thought that was interesting. Overall, not the book for me. My biggest complaint is the sheer number of characters and the chapters that just go on, especially towards the end. Year 3 was really the biggest slog, but I got so sick of Montgomery just describing all of these random people. And the other books are sort of like that. You get new characters. In the first one, obviously you're meeting everybody and you get the core cast, but throughout the other ones, I feel like new people are added and developed organically. This one was very strange because you got these new people and there'd be like 3 or 4 chapters that focus on this one person, and then there'd be another person coming in and we just move on from them. So we got a lot of character development in a very short time, a lot of marriage subplots going on. The only character besides the boarding house woman, the 2 widows, and Rebecca Dew that Anne lives with, we got Elizabeth, the girl who lives next door. We got her throughout the entire novel. Basically no Gilbert. He's got like a side scene in one of the scenes. I kind of don't mind that though. This book's about Anne. Like, get out of here, Gilbert. I don't know. So overall, it was more pleasant than I expected it to be. It was a good DNF when I decided not to read it while I was in law school. Now I get to put my bookmark in the next book. I'm using 2 because I was waiting for this one to come in. And I love these little ones. I got these at my bridal shower from my good friend Madeline, but they're little leafy guys. I have them in 3 colors, and I just love that. Look at that. Like, it looks like the book's growing. That's so great. But then it also, you can keep your place within the book. Genius. Absolutely brilliant. So I have that little guy. Olive does like really want to eat this and play with it though, which is a downside. But look at that. The foiling. I got a little bird, and this was my gift to myself for completing the readathon. So I got that. I will say I'm getting a little burnt out. I really pushed through this one. I'm glad that I did, because I kind of just needed to power through. But Monday I was really enjoying it. At the start I was really enjoying it, and then there were some chapters that had me like giggling and so happy. But last night, tonight, basically the whole 3rd year, there was like the first 4 or 5 chapters was one love story, and then we had another one. But then we finally got the cap on the Elizabeth story, which was actually pretty good. But I was like, I just need to get through this, so I'm done with it, and we can move on. I really liked the beginning. I felt like I could really feel the emotion of Anne getting married, and it was almost a little bit sad because the chapter is ending. It's happy, but it's also sad, and really describing the place where they moved and the wind and the water. And I thought that that was just great. And even the part getting to know the neighbors and introducing the neighbors, I liked that. I thought that was done well. But all the chapters where it was just big, long stories kind of from these people, I didn't really care. So towards the end, my attention did wane. And Anne does become a mother in this one. So now she is moved beyond me into her life experience, her age. She's getting to be older than me now. It's just different. I'll read one quote for now. After she's met her new neighbors and they're all hanging out and somebody comes to visit, at the end of that summer, Anne writes, "All in all, it was a never to be forgotten summer. One of those summers which come seldom into any life, but leave a rich heritage of beautiful memories in their going. One of those summers which, in a fortunate combination of delightful weather, delightful friends, and delightful doings, come as near to perfection as anything can come in this world." Too good to last, Anne told herself with a little sigh on the September day, when a certain nip in the wind and a certain shade of intense blue on the Gulf water said that autumn was hard by. I don't understand the autumn girlies. I love summer. Summer is by far the best season, and no, it's not just because we're off of school and we've been conditioned. Summer is amazing, it's great, it's fantastic, and I'm starting to appreciate fall more. But fall is sadness. It's just that little hint of melancholy because summer is over and it's the sign that things are changing, things are ending. I thought that captured that sentiment perfectly. It also captures them growing up, growing older, moving on. I think in one of the earlier books, there's Anne's like, "This is my last summer at Green Gables." Now I'm on to book 6. I haven't started this yet. I don't know if I'm gonna start it right away. I am nervous for this one as well because this one's the other one that was written after the original Anne series were written and slotted in. I also looked at the back, and I guess the plot of this one is Anna's trying to get Gilbert to fall back in love with her. That doesn't sound fantastic to me. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Something else I just noticed with the ones that were published later, they just have chapter numbers, and the ones part of the original series, the chapters have titles. So I'd be curious to know why that is. I think this might be the last like strictly Anne book. There are technically 8 in the series, at least the way that the American numbering works. But the next one is about her children, is my understanding. And then the last one is about one of her daughters, maybe her oldest daughter. And then there's also a book that was published posthumously in 2009. And then that one, Anne's grandma. I don't know if I have interest in reading that one. I don't have interest in reading the Avonlea Chronicles or Chronicles of Avonlea. There are 2 like in-betweeny ones. And I will say the first time that I read the 3rd book where Anne's in college, I didn't even really notice that there's this whole part where they like got this guy together or something and set him up and you don't really know what's happening. Like, I didn't even notice. And then this time I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, this really doesn't make sense. I probably should read that one, but I don't know. Anne is no longer the center. In the other 3, Anne is the focus, and there are other characters and other people, but it's about Anne and her growth and her part of her life. And that's when it really felt, and it was honestly, it was as soon as she became a mother. And this one, it felt when she became a mother like she no longer existed as an individual, and I really hated that. And I think it could have been done a little bit better. I know there's something to be said about the time, but it feels like in books 4 and 5, Anne is less the focus, and it's about Anne's impact on other people's lives, which there's something beautiful to be said about that. But given she is the main character and the focus of the story, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. It's difficult to keep that trajectory. So I'm curious how that will be moving forward. And I understand with maybe not this one, but the final 2 in the series, the focus shifts to her kids, which I think makes sense if the focus has completely shifted. But at least these past 2, I felt like we were in a weird in-between where Anne is the focus. We need her to pull, like we're following her. We're here because she's here, but she's not the center of the story. And it was a really weird dichotomy. That I'm loving this. I did not super love books 4 and 5. I ended up giving both of them 3 stars. I just think they weren't Montgomery's best work. They're not my favorite in the Anne series. I know 4 was more of my favorite when I was younger, but not anymore apparently. But I'm happy to report, I was nervous going into 6, happy to report I'm loving it. I'm back in it. It has that Anne feel. There's still a little bit of her, like, I'm gonna like match make and set these people up, and here's this chapter about this random person that I don't care about, but it is so much more focused on Anne and the center of her family. The back says, trying to make Gilbert still love her. No, it's not. That's not even a little bit what it's about. There's been none of that left, and I'm a pretty good way through. So I have about 140 pages left in this guide. About a month out from our trip right now, and I have 2 books in the Anne series left that I definitely want to read. The last one I'd be okay with taking with me and reading there. We'll see what happens. I think that I can still finish, but I have been reading a lot of other books that I've really been enjoying lately and want to make sure that I have time for those ones. But I'd at least like to get through this one as well as the next one. I'm excited for what books I'm gonna find in Prince Edward Island. Mapped out a couple of bookstores. I know that books are generally more expensive in Canada. That's just sort of a thing there. I really want to buy a copy of The Blue Castle. That's probably the Montgomery that I want to read the most. We'll see if I see any other Montgomery that I want to get. I just finished Anne of Ingleside. Was not expecting that. It was so good. I mentioned really liking it right at the start, and in the middle, there was one chapter where the ladies' aides came over and I was like, oh, here we go. Here's where it goes downhill. But other than that, I gave this one 5 stars too. I loved this one. This one is definitely up there with the first three. The first one's always going to be my favorite, but I think this one revisits a lot of the themes and the same stuff from the first one through a different lens, which is so interesting, which is so great. I think that you see a lot of Montgomery in this one. You see how much her writing has grown. I'm not sure if this is the last one that she wrote. So the way that the American books are packaged and marketed, it's 1 through 8, with the first being Anne of Green Gables and the last being Rilla. I always want to say Ria because like the double L, like it's Spanish, but it's not. So Rilla of Ingleside being the bookend, but 4 and 6 in that box set were written later, and 6 was written the latest. I don't know if it was the last one. Were you reading the book with me, bud? You're just hanging. Just hanging out. I think in the last clip I was saying it's not trying to get Gilbert to love her again. It's still not about that. Like, whoever wrote the summary on the back read like the first 5 chapters and the last 3 chapters. I don't know what they were doing. It's not an accurate description of what the novel's about. Maybe this gets kids excited about this book and reading it. I don't know. I guarantee you that I could not have cared less when I was 10. Anne is a mother, and you really get to see her coming into motherhood. My complaint with the last book, number 5, the one where she gets married and has her first 2 children, was that Anne was reduced to this mother figure, I felt like. And it was less in terms of because she was a mother, because she now has children. It was the way that it was written. The book wasn't about Anne. In the beginning, it was. I thought the beginning was quite well done. But towards the end, it's about the neighbors. It's about Anne being selfless. And that's beautiful. But also, Anne is no longer the focal point in her own life, which was really quite sad. It felt like she was doing everything for other people and she didn't get to be herself. You didn't get to see her growing into herself. And that was my main complaint with that one. I think House of Dreams is easily my least favorite book. I didn't love Poplars on my reread, but I also didn't hate it. I just thought it was kind of boring. I don't think House of Dreams was all that good. I'm interested to start reading more and getting into Ellen Montgomery's life, because I think that's going to really eliminate some of the stuff that I'm seeing with Anne's marriage based on her own marriage and some of the neighbors. And I think that's maybe what's coming out in the 5th book. And then at the end of the 6th book, some of the comments on writing and living and getting older. Montgomery is writing this in the mid 30s. It's written a decade or 2 after, especially that first Anne book. It's written several years later. Thoughts on that? The middle of the book is kind of like a fun romp. You get some really cute, funny moments where Rilla goes, well, I only have 2 parents, so I'm pretty close to being an orphan, and nobody feels sorry for me. The way it was delivered, hilarious, just absolutely hilarious. There were parts where I laughed. I really want to talk about the end without spoilers. I'll try to. Probably the last like 50-ish pages, you get 2 little vignettes of Diana and Nan. I think the first one is Nan, and then you get Diana. And then you get these last 3 really powerful chapters following Anne. So the last 2 little vignettes with Nan especially, but also Diana, it really talks about childhood, and it's told from their perspective, but then we also get them telling Anne, and we get Anne's perspective. Something I loved throughout this book is Anne taking children seriously, remembering what it was like to be a child, and when she had this big imagination and wasn't taken seriously, and really validating their emotions. That was so great to see. And then in the last section, we get Anne. She's tired. In a lot of these other books, maybe all of the other books, there's what they call in some of the earlier ones Jonas days. When they have a bad day, there's a sad chapter, sad things happen. But at the end, we get this much darker tone. And Montgomery, she's talking about the monotony of life, the monotony of motherhood, the monotony of marriage, how habit, routine, it wears you down. And there's some lines and some passages, and they're quite sad. Anne has bordering on depression. She recovers quite quickly, but these passages are really dark and sad. And we get some foreshadowing about Walter with a cross on the wall. And I know in Rilla, the war comes up. So the war is looming, and this book was written later as the war is approaching, as the war is starting. I don't think it would have been finished yet. So I think this went back, and this was added in later, but really sad, and an interesting perspective to add. An interesting perspective to add from the author. I know what's going to happen later, but for now, it's just this happy moment, and I thought nothing of it. I thought that was so interesting to add in there. I do want to read a few passages from these sections of what I've been talking about. And as always, I've been taking notes of certain passages. I've mostly been trying to pay attention to the nature and season writing, especially we're going late September, early October. So some of these quotes, I think will just be perfect, and I can like overlay them while we're actually there visiting. So the first one, there were so many passages about fiction versus reality, fiction and imagination, living in a different world, living in your own world you create, the dangers of it, the benefits of it if done properly, escape. And you know, that's a theme that's near and dear to my heart. I did not know, and this appears in Anne too, and I think it's more fleshed out here, these themes. I did not know that I've been thinking about these themes since I was 10 years old, and it makes sense. It all makes sense now, but this is sort of the culminating quote for those themes, in my opinion. So this is Anne. She remembered the child she had been at old Green Gables. She remembered the haunted wood and two small girls who had been terribly frightened by their own pretending thereof. And she knew the dreadful bitterness of losing a dream. An imagination is a wonderful thing to have, but like every gift, we must possess it and not let it possess us. A little later, but you must learn to keep on this side of the borderline between the real and the unreal. Then the power to escape at will into a beautiful world of your own will help you amazingly through the hard places of life. I love it. I love that advice. I think it's a great summary of imagination fiction, what it can be used for, what benefit it has. The second to last chapter is a party scene. Another cool stylistic writing choice that Montgomery does in this one, not just in chapter 40, but in other chapters. Honestly, the aid chapter that I was just complaining about it, she does it in there. I didn't really notice because I didn't care about the people, if I'm being honest, but she uses dialogue very effectively and weaves it in with description, and then she has parentheticals in italics. That's internal monologue, and you get to go into the heads of some of these other characters, which is really interesting because normally that doesn't happen. You kind of see, you don't get that internal. You get different characters' perspective, but it's more of a narration, or in the case of book 4, Anne recounting what happened. But here you get Christine, you get her thoughts, you get Anne's thoughts. Christine stared, not recognizing the quotation. What did Anne Shirley mean? But then, of course, she had been noted at Redmond for her mysterious speeches. Just a lot of internality, and then Montgomery keeps you secluded off from Gilbert, which needs to happen for the function of the story. It's just handled very well. It feels very postmodern. It feels very modernism. It feels very different from the storytelling, anecdotal vignette style of the rest of these novels that are taking place in the late 1800s. It's the style of most of the books is very telling of the time, and this book feels different, especially this chapter, especially the end. And I'm like, I wish there were more, because I know the other two are written prior to this one. So I don't think we're going to get more of that experimentation. Maybe I'm wrong, but I am now intrigued about perhaps reading that 2009 book that I haven't heard anything else about, that was written by Montgomery but was not published during her life. I'm very interested. So this party scene, dare I say it, it is Mrs. Dalloway-esque. It is. It's very well done. It's very well written. I was very pleased. The ending, also Mrs. Dalloway-esque. You get Anne at a window. Like, need I say more? It's perfect. It's fantastic. It's also similar in tone to Mrs. Dalloway. Peter Walsh and Richard Dalloway, with Clarissa married Richard, but she could have married Peter. But it's Gilbert could have married Christine, but he married Anne. What could have been, aging, how things have turned out, how things are different. It's so interesting. But you get this finale to the book, and it's Anne. She turned away from the window in her white gown with her hair in its 2 long braids. She looked like the Anne of Green Gables days, of Redmond days, of the House of Dreams days. That inward glow was still shining through her. Through the open doorway came the soft sound of children breathing. Gilbert, who seldom snored, was inaudibly snoring now. Anne grinned. She thought of something Christine had said. Poor childless Christine, shooting her little arrows of mockery. What a family, Anne repeated exuberantly. It even recalls back that earlier passage I read about Anne remembering these 2 young girls. And I feel like in this one, we get a lot of Anne remembering. We get a lot of Anne understanding and reconciling with her current self, but also reflecting and revisiting her past selves and seeing how much of her past self she has carried on into this new stage of her life and how much of it she's left behind. I loved it. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. I'm very impressed. Maybe this one is my favorite. I hate to say that. Can I like this one more than the first one? I don't know. I think this one's on par with the first one. I've talked myself into it. The next book up is Rainbow Valley. This one is about Anne's children who I got to know in this novel. Most of them aren't born. We see 2 of them born, and Jem is the one that we meet in House of Dreams. I love in this one that Jem says, I feel left out because I wasn't born at Ingleside. I was born at the House of Dreams. Then yesterday, tore through Rainbow Valley. Doesn't mean I loved it. but didn't hate it. This is not my favorite Anne book by any means, but it's not my least favorite either. Again, my gripe with this one is more about the neighbor children than Anne's own children. I am so glad that she went back and wrote Anne of Ingleside. I think that book was really necessary to show Anne as a mother, get more Anne, and also really introduce us to our children, because in this book we don't even really get to know them, is my thoughts. I did really like some of the middle sections of this book. Most of the rest of it is little anecdotes, what everybody gets up to. But in the middle and towards the end, the book really takes a heavier tone. It's present a little bit in the last book just because it was written post World War I, pre-World War II, but that isn't really the focus of this book. But this book is leading up to the last one where World War I is becoming a thing. So we get these really sad, heart-wrenching scenes. Montgomery's thoughts on the war, that war is bad, that war is evil, and it's really devastating because the majority of these books, it's about children. It's about these children playing and growing up and hope for the future. And we're meant to understand that these kids really won't have a future, a lot of them. And that's heartbreaking and devastating. So that was that one. I'm done with that now. And the next one is Rilla of Ingleside. This one will take a darker tone. I don't think I picked up on any of that when I was a kid, and this is the only one I didn't finish. I have high hopes from this one. We're getting back to Anne's children. This follows Anne's youngest child, and I think this one will have more thematic structure, which is what, when I say I liked this book, I didn't like this book. With the Anne books, the ones that really stick out to me are the ones that have more of a theme and explore topics, not even necessarily serious topics, although most of them are. And the other, there were really three that didn't work that well for me: Poplars, House of Dreams, and Rainbow Valley are probably the three where the themes are the loosest, and it really feels more like it's just about youth and growing up and childhood and all of that, which is fine. I committed to the bit. I dyed my hair red. I'm gonna be like Anne. I'm gonna be like Rilla. I didn't want to go too dramatic, so I don't know how well you can see it, but it's definitely in the light. You can see the red low lights, and I'm very, very excited. We also didn't do the top up here. I don't want the root maintenance. I have no interest in that, but there we go. About as crazy as it gets for me. We're leaving today. We fly out tomorrow, but the trip's in motion today. So I'm going into work real quick, just drop some things up. Ryan already left, and I'll be leaving by noon. We'll be on the road. Rilla of Ingleside. Page 1, Montgomery said to eat your heart out. The book opens with Archduke Ferdinand getting shot, and this book is very much about the war. It's very heavy. It is very different in tone from all of the other ones. It most closely matches the end of book 6 in terms of tone and exploration. And I didn't like Rilla when we first met her. She was annoying and vapid, and she grows probably too fast. It's devastating. It's devastating reading this book. I think you need to read it after you've read all of them, after you've met Anne's children. I think book 6 was absolutely necessary. I think that Montgomery needed to write it, and I think it needed to be slotted in right where it was. I'm going to get into a little bit of a spoiler. I'm not actually at this part yet, but I know what happens, and I know why I initially stopped reading It's foreshadowed in book 6. It's heavily foreshadowed in the beginning of the book. I think it actually is more powerful if you know what's going to happen, but if you don't, just skip the rest of this clip. I was reading it blissfully unaware. I felt the melancholy, but I got to this passage, and this passage is Walter. And the war has just broken out. People are just starting to go, and Walter isn't going yet, but we know he will. Before this war is over, he said, or something said through his lips, every man and woman and child in Canada will feel it. You, Mary, will feel it. Feel it to your heart's core. You will weep tears of blood over it. The piper has come, and he will pipe until every corner of the world has heard his awful and irresistible music. It will be years before the dance of death is over. Years, Mary. And in those years, millions of hearts will break. At least initially. I think it might be shifting a bit now. The initial thoughts of the other characters towards the war are positive. It's that buck up, support our troops, national pride mentality, and you do see a little bit of Anne and how affecting it is. We aren't following Anne in this book, we're following Rilla, which is how it's been in the other stories. But with Walter, you get a very different attitude towards the war, especially initially, and I feel like Montgomery is using him as a mouthpiece for her own thoughts and how she feels about it. After I read that, so there's a crack in the spine right where I stopped reading when I was little. And if you've seen Friends, I had to put the book in the freezer. So I did open it up to the crack where the crack is, and Walter dies. And that's where I stopped reading. And I'm sort of grateful to that past version of myself because I got to enjoy the books one last time without that reality hovering over them. However, if you do read 6, it hovers over all of 7. I'm really liking this one. This one, 6 and 1 are definitely the masterpieces, the truly literary pieces in this series, and the ones that offer the most commentary on life and current affairs. I think I will end up picking up The Blythes Are Quoted because that one was not published because of Montgomery's anti-war sentiments, and it would have been published right before World War II or as World War II was happening. So I'm curious about that one after I feel like we pretty strongly already get that anti-war feel in Rilla. Probably not the happiest go luckiest book to bring on the trip. Did not end up finishing all of the Anne books before the trip. As you can see, I have about 150 pages left in this one, so I'm gonna take it along. Maybe I'll finish it on the plane before I get to the island. Maybe I won't. I'll finish it when I get back. I don't know, but I'm very glad that I picked these up again before we left.